The Iranian regime had long calculated that its carefully engineered dual military structure would forever guarantee the survival of the clerical leadership against any wave of domestic unrest or economic collapse. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps stood as the ideological vanguard with its privileged economic holdings and direct loyalty to the supreme leader, while the regular army known as the Artesh provided the conventional backbone bound by centuries of professional tradition. However, the unthinkable just happened in Tehran, where units of the regular army have turned their weapons against the regime's own Basij militia and IRGC enforcers, openly siding with civilian protesters in the streets of the capital and marking what may be the beginning of the end for the Islamic Republic as we know it. The images you are about to see on your screens capture scenes that defy every established assumption about Iran's internal power balance. What you see is soldiers in standard Artesh uniforms positioning T-72 main battle tanks and Zulfikar variants to form protective barriers around Azadi Square, rather than advancing to disperse the crowds. The footage shows chaotic urban confrontations where army personnel actively shield demonstrators from regime paramilitary squads, creating the first visible cracks in decades of absolute control. In the images that will appear on your screen shortly, you can clearly observe the dramatic standoff that unfolded in central Tehran as armored vehicles hold key intersections while Basij motorcyclists retreat under unexpected fire. On March 12, 2026 night, following the initial wave of protests that erupted on December 28, 2025, amid the catastrophic collapse of the Iranian rial and hyperinflation surpassing 45%, the situation in Tehran reached a critical inflection point. The regime, already reeling from the brutal January crackdown that claimed over 36,500 lives, according to Institute for the Study of War Assessments and German intelligence reports, had assumed the military would remain loyal as in past crises. Units from the Artesh's 1st Armored Division, based on the outskirts of the capital, received direct orders to suppress renewed demonstrations at Azadi Square and surrounding districts. Instead, according to preliminary data and CSIS analysis, these commanders refused the directives, citing the illegitimacy of firing on their own people, and turned their forces against the Basiji paramilitary units dispatched for the crackdown. This was not a random act of defiance, but the culmination of months of growing rifts between the professional regular army and the ideologically driven Revolutionary Guards, exacerbated by supply shortages and desertions that left some Artesh divisions with only minimal ammunition rations. But that is not the most shocking detail. We will explain this in the later parts of the video. Now we must look at how the technical capabilities now being turned inward reveal the depth of long simmering resentment within the ranks. The Iranian military structure remains unique, divided between the Artesh, numbering approximately 350,000 personnel focused on territorial defense with conventional platforms like upgraded T-72 main battle tanks, artillery systems, and mechanized infantry units trained in standard military doctrine, and the IRGC, a parallel force of 150,000 that serves as the regime's ideological guardian with control over missile programs, Shahed kamikaze drones, and the Basij paramilitary militia specialized in asymmetric internal security. Unlike the Basij, which relies on light arms motorcycles for rapid crowd control and brutal suppression tactics, the Artesh possesses advanced command structures, fiber optic guided systems, and L-shaped ambush formations adapted from battlefield doctrine to urban terrain. In Tehran, these technical advantages allowed defecting units to establish defensive perimeters, neutralizing IRGC surveillance drones, and securing ammunition depots that denied regime loyalists critical stores of small arms and crowd control munitions. METTC assessment systems evaluating mission enemy troops, terrain, and civilians have clearly been applied by the defectors to their advantage, creating no-go zones for IRGC reinforcements and allowing precise operations that minimize indiscriminate violence while maximizing control over strategic intersections. This tactical development carries immediate operational significance that elevates the standoff from isolated refusals to campaign-level disruption. The immediate battlefield result of these army units holding their ground has led to tactical advantages for the protesters, enabling larger crowds to assemble without immediate massacre. This operational maneuver has forced the IRGC to divert resources from external proxy operations in Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria, creating strategic shifts that weaken Iran's influence across the axis of resistance. The chain of causation flows logically from initial defiance to territorial control over 400 square kilometers of urban areas, which enables further defections that in turn erode the regime's monopoly on violence. Map-based analysis shows the safe corridors now spanning 15 kilometers in the city center, transforming what began as protest protection into a de facto operational safe haven that threatens the entire command structure. According to Defense Ministry leaks and CSIS quantified assessments, the loss of control over key logistics nodes has already disrupted IRGC supply lines, forcing regime hardliners into a defensive posture that no amount of ideological rhetoric can reverse. The geopolitical context of this military fracture expands the stakes from Tehran streets to the broader great power competition reshaping the Middle East. This situation reminds us of historical parallels, particularly the 1979 Iranian Revolution itself, when parts of the army turned against the Shah, or the Winter War dynamics where conventional forces found themselves at odds with ideological command. Economic data integration adds analytical depth, showing Iran's trade volume with China falling by 12% in recent months, while defense spending strains under internal consumption rather than regional projection. With the accession of new regional alignments, including potential Western support for opposition elements, the Persian Gulf has effectively become a contested zone where Iran's proxy networks from Hezbollah to the Houthis suddenly find themselves adrift without reliable IRGC Quds force coordination or missile resupply like the K-Bar and Fateh systems. Alliance dynamics receive detailed examination as Russia and China watch anxiously their strategic partnership agreements with Tehran facing new tests, while Western democratic values of freedom, sovereignty, and resilience stand validated by the emerging military realignment. The picture we see today is almost an exact replica of moments when authoritarian control cracks under economic pressure, creating historical power shifts that no propaganda can obscure. The psychological and human dimension of this crisis creates emotional engagement that transforms abstract statistics into personal tragedies. The man behind the wheel of a Zulfikar tank is a soldier. The expression on his face is not fear, but the utter helplessness of someone caught in the gears of a system that has betrayed its own people for decades. These vignettes humanize the defectors while maintaining documentary distance as individual soldiers now face the moral choice of defying orders or continuing to prop up a leadership that has lied to them. Leadership psychology receives speculative analysis showing the supreme leader's strategy based entirely on the West's exhaustion and remaining IRGC loyalty rather than addressing the soldiers on the front lines of internal unrest. He trusts election outcomes abroad more than the reality of his crumbling capital. Civilian impact appears through symbolic objects and statistics as Russia, threatening the world with its proxies, began locking butter in cabinets in stores. Here the Iranian regime faces the same breaking point where youth unemployment reaches record levels and families wake up realizing their money is worthless. Their sons died for nothing and their leaders lied. This maintains moral complexity while directing blame toward the leadership rather than individual soldiers who now demonstrate resilience and determination in protecting their fellow citizens. This tactical victory represents something much larger, but the truly shocking detail is not these initial clashes alone. The future projection and escalation patterns suggest current events serve as precursors to larger shifts that could reshape the entire region. This confrontation could turn into a deadly boomerang for the regime in Tehran. Only time will tell whether these army defections will spread to other divisions across the country. The coming months may determine not only the fate of the Islamic Republic, but whether Iran can remain intact as a unified state without descending into full civil conflict. We are at the end of the slowly phase. The suddenly phase may be much closer than you think. In the short term, expect more units to join as news spreads through secure channels. In the medium term, the regime may launch brutal counteroffensives using remaining IRGC assets, leading to bloody street battles. In the long term, this military turn could enable complete strategic realignment or the emergence of new democratic structures. Will the 500-kilometer network of influence through proxies become Iran's bridge to survival, or the pit from which the IRGC cannot escape? These unresolved tensions create anticipation for what unfolds next as the ring of fire around the regime tightens from within. The streets Tehran has effectively lost control of represent the clearest picture of the regime's dwindling options and shrinking world. Winter may be coming to an end for the protesters, but for the clerical leadership, the cold reality of isolation is just beginning. Don't forget to share your thoughts on this topic in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our video. Presented by TGN, thank you for choosing us.